correct me if I'm wrong, people come to you with personal crisis, personal issues, not legal issues, correct?
Well, both. The answer is yes. So let me explain that.
Sure.
So the mission of the firm is to save families whose loved ones are suffering from substance use, mental health disorders, and failed attempts at recovery. So we're taking calls from families from all over the country, and it's typically mom and dad. And they're calling us because they have an adult child in the family with a long history of drug use and mental illness and treatment that doesn't work if they'll even go. They're probably not taking the medications they've been prescribed. They may well have been a guest of the state, either through the criminal system or the mental health system, and maybe even have had an overdose. And they call us to fix that problem. So for them, because this issue, which has been going on for years and years and years, is destroying their family. Okay. Which is why they call behavioral health issues a family disease. So for them, it's very much a personal problem, right?
So why do they call a lawyer for it?
Here's why. So here's what we created. There are three elements to what we do, right? So we're a law firm. So obviously we're selling legal services. So the business of a law firm, for the lawyers who see this and don't know, is to sell legal services. That's what the business does. It sells legal services. So the first part of what we do is we're selling the client a legal service. Now there are three statutes, three laws here in Florida that allow a family to go to court and get varying degrees of control over what is typically an out of control situation. Anything from an order to send somebody to treatment for 3 months at a time, or we get the order to send them to treatment and we have maybe mom and dad or just mom or just dad appointed as the guardian, a legal guardian, which means they can now start making medical decisions, have access to medical records, control their finances, restrict their ability to travel, take away their driver's license, decide where they live and who they spend time with. How much control do we need? So there's two statutes we use for that. The third statute, which is called the Baker Act, which is what happened to my family member, when it's used correctly, is a powerful life-saving tool. And there may be times we need the state to step in because that's the fastest way to get somebody off of the street, right? We may have somebody in such crisis that I don't have time to run to court and draft a petition and see a judge. I just need to be able to pick up the phone, call 911, and have the police come and get this person and take them to a place of safety. So we operate under those three laws. So the legal component is what we focus on as lawyers. The second component is what I call clinical. So a lot of the time, clients will come to us because they got referred by an interventionist or a clinician or a treatment center, because there's no point in having this wonderful piece of paper in your hand if you don't use it to put somebody into treatment, because that's the goal here, right? If they have a disease, we need to get them treatment. I mean, if you had cancer, God forbid, right? You have to treat that or it will eventually destroy you. It'll kill you potentially. So we want to get them into treatment. Now, if that treatment component is already taken care of, great. I don't need to worry about it. I just need to make sure we can get them to the appropriate facility. But a lot of the time, families call us and they don't have treatment lined up. So how do we address that? Well, one of the things I did was I aligned myself with two clinicians that I know, like, and trust. They are not employees of the firm, but they are our go-to clinicians. And the family can hire one of them. One's a forensic psychologist. The other one's a licensed clinical social worker. And they can retain one of them if they want to find the clinically appropriate facility. In other words, set up the treatment component for us and the family. The third component is what I call law enforcement. So now as prosecutor, we had our own internal police force. We used to call it investigations. If I needed a witness found, I called investigations. Can you find this person for me? If I needed somebody served, I called investigations. So we had our own internal police force within the state attorney's office, right? They could do everything. I mean, they can arrest, they can do everything the police can. They're law enforcement. They just happen to be our law enforcement. And I always said to myself, wow, that's a really cool thing. Imagine being in private practice and having that. So what we have is I have a retired cop on staff and John has a team of investigators, because people go missing. They end up on the streets. They walk out of treatment and sometimes somebody's got to go find them. Well, if I wait for the police to do it, it might not happen. And it's not because the police don't care. They just don't have the resources to go looking for people. So we will do it for them. Right. And, we go find them. And if I can get a judge to give me some type of order, a pickup order, which allows me to grab the person, then we can call law enforcement in to come and help us to pick the person up and get them to a place of safety. So that has been a very important piece for us. But we found that those three things together really can make a difference. But I'll tell you, Sheeta, recovery is not a destination. It's a journey, and it takes time for someone to experience recovery. And not only that, for them to be able to maintain it. Because the goal is to try and get it right the first time. I'm not looking for repeat business, not necessarily from the same client. That doesn't mean to say that we don't represent somebody more than once, but I want to get this right the first time because by the time the family comes to us, we're typically the last port of call. Like I said, nobody wants to call a lawyer. I learned that from my dad, and they sure as heck don't want to give us any money. So if they're coming to us, they're desperate. And we
Right.
have to respect that and we have to honor that. But we also have to be honest with them about what we can do and what we can't do.
I
If I
understand.
don't think we can help somebody, my team will tell them that. If I think we can, we'll tell them that too, and we'll give them options. And then it's up to them to decide what's right for your family. What do you want to do? Here's what we can do. Here's the effect of that, and here's the consequence. Or maybe you don't do anything, and here's the cause, effect, and consequence of that too.
Absolutely. I understand that. And it's a very important job because you're working with families with crisis.
Yeah, and
So
they're
how does this work? It's emotionally very charged, right? Supercharged emotionally,
yeah,
obviously.
and
Um, you work as a couple with your wife as well
I do.
in this. And how do you keep yourselves grounded and keep your energy intact, if you will, in order to be able to create space for all these families?
Yeah, as I've gotten older, my father used to tell me, the older you get, the faster it goes. And he was right. I didn't realize that until he was gone. And just yesterday, I turned 59, and I can't believe I'm knocking on the door of 60. I mean, I feel good, but the time is really flying by. So, even with my wife, I try to spend quality time with my wife, right? I take her out on a date at least once a week. Like I said, I learned a lot of lessons from the first go round. So I'm trying to be a much better husband the second time, and I'm a work in progress with that too. So I try to spend quality time with my wife, and I try, I exercise 4 days a week, and I'm getting back into the martial arts. I also try to avoid the things, you know, I have people in the business that can address the issues that I don't want to deal with, right? I don't want to be running to court anymore. I don't want to have to be prepping for hearings night after night after night after night. I'm 32 years in now with the practice of law, and I don't want to do that anymore. I don't enjoy doing that. I'm great at it. I just don't want to do it. So, as the old saying goes, who, not how, right? I have hired people to do the things that I don't want to do anymore. And that enables me to focus on things that I enjoy. One of which is like having a conversation with somebody like you and sharing my passion, right? I mean, I'm incredibly grateful that you've given me this opportunity and we're spending some time together. And hopefully somebody out there is going to hear this. And maybe it's a family who's in crisis, or maybe it's an entrepreneur out there who's been working like crazy to get their business going. And they hear what I have to say and they say, if he can do it, I can do it. And I think that's what my father saw when he first came to this country. And I know you understand that as somebody who came to this country, right? My
Yes.
father believed in the American dream, and he believed that if you work hard and you work hard enough and keep doing it, you can be successful. And even with, all the craziness that we see in the world today, because there's always going to be craziness going on, there's always going to be political discourse. Forget all of that garbage. If you work hard, you can get the reward. There's no such thing as a free lunch. It doesn't happen. Work hard and get the reward. But it starts with finding people that you can help. And if you keep doing it and you do it better than anybody else, somebody will throw money at you to keep doing it.
Very well said. Very well said. And this work that you do also, what did it teach you about fear, control, and human vulnerability?
God. Well, there's just, I know one thing, I don't have control over everything. My wife likes to tell me, you cannot control how other people are, but you can control how you respond. Right. And that means having control of your emotions. Sometimes I'm good at that and sometimes I'm not. I think deep down, sometimes if we have a couple of quiet days in the office, I think back to what it was like to be sitting in that library. And sometimes I come from a place of fear, which is not healthy either, because we're so far removed from that. It's ridiculous. So I have to sort of, I have to make sure I understand where we came from and where we are now. And sometimes my wife will be like, come on, you're being completely ridiculous. We're going out for dinner. Stop. Right. We have an amazing business. We have an amazing family. You took care of your mom. You did everything you said you were going to do. And so sometimes you just need to be snapped back into reality. Um, and I realize good times don't last forever, and neither do bad. So if we go a couple of days where we don't get hired on a case, it's just a matter of days before somebody calls us and we get a case in. Nothing lasts forever. No, businesses don't last forever. Bad times, good times. This is the universe, right? Nothing lasts forever. And as the great Winston Churchill once said, if you're going through hell, keep going.
Wait, say that again.
Winston Churchill, who, other than maybe Margaret
Yes,
Thatcher,
yes.
is probably the greatest prime minister that from of Great Britain. And he had many sayings, but one of them was when somebody said to him, "What happens if you're going through hell?" He said, "Keep going." So if you're going through hell, keep going because
Going.
nothing lasts forever. So if you're going through bad times, keep going because eventually you get to the good times. But if you don't keep going, yeah, you're going to get
Gonna
stuck
get
in
stuck?
your hand, right? So I remembered that. And so, and I also tried to read. I try to read, or I'm not a big reader anymore. I like audiobooks. So if I'm in the gym, I try to listen to audiobooks.
Mhm.
Just recently, I've been listening to Think and Grow Rich for Lawyers. So Napoleon
For
Hill.
lawyers?
So R. John Robbins created an audiobook. It's called Think and Grow Rich for Lawyers. It's a podcast.
Wait, this is a podcast. It's not the original Napoleon Hill.
Right. So it's not the original. What R. John Robbins did, my mentor, was he's a big fan. Remember, I told you personal growth has to precede financial growth. And he's very much a big fan of um, Think and Grow Rich. And what he did was he basically created a book that's Think and Grow Rich for lawyers, right? And he talks about all of the things that lawyers have to deal with. And I've been re-listening to that for the last 2 weeks, and it really sort of reignited me to take more action, right? Not to sit on my laurels and pat myself on the back and say what a great job I did last year, because that year's gone and we start back again at zero. So think I think it's like exercise, right? You got to continually exercise. I try to make sure I get to the gym 4 days a week. I know if I get there less and I start eating like garbage, I get out of shape. And I think it's the same with your mind. You have to keep working on your mindset, right? Because there are days when you do feel like life is a struggle, the business is a struggle, and you just have to keep working on your mindset and keep moving forward. And so the last couple of weeks, I've been listening to Think and Grow Rich for Lawyers, and I was like, wow, okay, I sort of rebooted my mindset to get myself back in the right frame of mind to continue to move forward for this year because we got lofty goals and I want to achieve them.
Do you have a personal ideology about risk taking?
Yeah, it's so funny. There was a really famous interview with Elon Musk, and they asked him that very question, and he said
They did.
they did, and they said to him, because when he started Tesla, I think he sort of his mathematical mind calculated there was a 10% chance he'd be successful. And the interviewer said, "Well, was that enough?" He said, "Yeah, 10% is good enough for me." Now, I don't know if I'm quite as open-minded as Elon Musk, and let's not remember him because he's obviously a very, very wealthy guy. But I think there was a time where he wasn't a wealthy guy; he had nothing. Same with God, the guy that started Amazon, right? There's a famous photograph of, oh my God, I can't think of his name now. Very famous photograph of the guy sitting in his office, right? Just at a computer program, just write
Yes,
code,
yes.
right? So not everybody has come from something. Some people are not born on third base, right? Some people are born on first base, and we have to hustle.
Yes.
Um, I think for me, it was easy to take the risk because I could only go one direction, which was up. So, I mean, the risk was minimal, right? It was either go get a job or start a business. And I decided I didn't want to work for anybody else. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to see if I could build a business. Um,
Do you calculate the risks that you take or you just jump? and see what happens.
So I used to just jump and see what happens. Several years ago, about 5 or 6 years ago, I got advised I should try marketing on TV, like these PI lawyers that market on TV. And I spent so much money on TV, I almost went broke again, and I got zero business out of it. These days, when it comes to making those kinds of decisions, I have much stricter financial controls. So I have a fractional CFO, chief financial officer. And for instance, if I'm going to spend something on marketing, or if I'm going to hire another associate, we calculate, one, is it in the budget, right? Can we afford it? And two, what's our return on the investment? Because, at the end of the day, numbers don't lie. And so these days we make much more strategic decisions, right? What are we willing to risk? Because I have to consider the fact that I have a lot of mouths that we're responsible for feeding. And do we think we'll get a return on investment based on, past history? And so I've kept a spreadsheet, actually an Excel spreadsheet, since the day I opened up the office. I've got every client that ever hired us on that spreadsheet. It's not an exact science. It's not QuickBooks, but it tells me where I am month to month, year to year. And it helps me to just see where we're at and gives me a certain comfort level, or sometimes a discomfort level, depending on the week. But these days I'm not quite, I wouldn't say that I'm risk adverse. I would just say I make more calculated decisions based on how I think it could affect the business and the people that work for us. And of course myself, because I don't have the trust fund sitting there. So, a long way from being broke, but you have a couple bad months and that can change dramatically. So I try to be a little more calculated. And I also, candidly, because I have such an amazing partner, discuss it with my wife. Something else I learned, right? I don't make significant financial decisions unilaterally. I discuss them with my wife and say, what do you think about this? And she might say, yeah, I like the sound of that. Let's talk to Brad, our chief financial officer, and see what he thinks. How do the numbers crunch? Or she might say, look, that's ridiculous. We're not doing that. Okay, got it. She
Great.
brings it back to reality. So if you're starting from zero, what's your risk? You know, ask and you shall receive.
Knock and the door will be open.
Yeah, right. It's so funny. I went to a breakfast this morning, and I didn't really feel like going. For some reason, I just wasn't in the mood. And I said to myself, okay, if you go, you might meet somebody that can help you to move the business forward. And as it happened, I did. And if you don't go, there's 100% chance that you will definitely not meet somebody who can move your business forward. So again, it wasn't a huge risk, but the point was, I said to myself, okay, I'm not going to make the excuse that I just don't feel like going, because sometimes you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I went, and I think it's going to pay dividends. I found somebody that wants to have us do a presentation, which gets me in front of more eyeballs and helps us to grow the business.
Grant Cardone actually teaches a lot about being comfortable with
I'm a big
staying.
fan of Grant Cardone's.
You
You know,
are?
I am. Well, Grant's in recovery,
Yes.
and
And
he came from nothing. If you read any
yeah,
of his books,
of
so
course. I have taken classes, even marketing classes with him.
yeah, the guy's a genius, and actually, he's now here in South Florida. So
Yes, yes.
he's got a little book. I'm a big audiobook guy, so I think one of the first ones
10x.
yeah, I've listened to that one. The one I think I really liked was, if you ever listened to the Millionaire Booklet.
Yes, of course.
So what is it? How long does it take to listen to the whole thing? 3 hours?
Like, yeah, it's not that was his
Yeah,
very first book, I believe, that
yeah,
he
the
wrote.
Millionaire Booklet, and he talks all about money, and the idea that there's sort of this concept, well, money's bad. People that have money are bad, right? And he says, look, it's not about good or bad. It's about having the freedom to make choices in your life, right? And what you do with it, that's up to you. Right? There's plenty of broke people out there who are bad. There's plenty of rich people out there who are bad. It's got nothing to do with it. It's about what you do with your life, and if you make money, what do you do with it? I mean, that's your choice, right? Do you want to give it away, or do you want to travel the world? Well, that's fine. But the idea that just because people have money, they're inherently bad, right? Well, they must have stolen it, or they must have done something wrong, is just fundamentally flawed. And all that does is convince people that they shouldn't work hard to achieve their dreams. And that's not what America is about. It's not
And
what my
money
father.
only absolutely, money only amplifies who the person truly
Yeah,
is.
I mean, if you're a jerk, you're a jerk, whether you've got money or not got money.
It will put it on the pedestal.
Right. So,
Um,
good
what
book. Hmm.
very, very good book. Did your interpretation of power changed now versus when you were in a traditional justice work? And now that you have your own business and you're your own leader versus back in the day where you were working for other people.
You mean did my
Your
maybe
interpretation of power, what does power mean now after the journey that you have gone through versus back in the day when you just started this work?
so I mean, so I guess, I have a different type of power. When you're a government lawyer, you yield considerable power, right? You get to make the decision as to whether or not somebody should be prosecuted. You get to at least weigh in on the decision as to whether or not somebody should be incarcerated. And, not to sound like a movie, but with great power comes great responsibility. And when I was fresh out of law school, I was full of pity. All right, let's lock them all up. And that really stems from the fact that in Florida, the mandate in our criminal system, even today, as it was back in the 90s, is to punish first and rehabilitate second. But, you can't just lock everybody up. Sometimes there's an underlying cause. And that was one of the things that when I first started to be a prosecutor, I realized when we kept seeing the same faces over and over again, that there was something wrong with the system. You just can't lock someone's sick, locking them up doesn't necessarily help them. Obviously, if they commit violent crimes, then yeah, we may have to lock them up just to protect the rest of society from them. So I had that power as a prosecutor, and I got to
How
be on
about
the. Go ahead. I'm
how
sorry.
about personal power? Personal power.
So I think when it comes to personal power, right? I mean, we have the power to make decisions as to what trajectory our life is going to go in. For instance, I might get, when I was living in California and I was dating women that there was no possibility there was ever going to be anything serious there, right? I made a conscious decision to date women, right? Spend time with people that I was like, well, it's going to be, it's going to be a week, it's going to be a month, whatever it's going to be, right? It's just I wasn't thinking that far ahead. So funny. I remember many years ago, she did not that I digress. I went on a date with a girl, and she said to me, "Where do you see yourself in five years?" I said, "5 years? I don't think I can think far further ahead than the next 5 minutes." That's where my mindset was. And needless to say, that didn't go anywhere, and she ended up marrying somebody else. But I think that when it comes to personal power, you have to decide like in what direction do you want your life to go into. And that was a decision like, I said to you, I had to take 100% responsibility. When it came to my career, that was a relatively easy decision. When it came to my personal life, that was a much harder decision. In fact, when I met my now wife, I told her, I said, if you're looking to get married, you got the wrong guy. I'll never get married again. And here's the long and short of it is I got married and it turned out to be the best decision I've ever made. The single best decision I've ever made. I would say this is the happiest I've ever been. It's the most successful I've ever been. And I'll tell you, if I hadn't have married her, I don't think I'd have been sitting here right now. I'd have had an okay business, but not
Mm.
what I have now. I couldn't have done this without her.
That's so lovely. I wanna be mindful of the time. We have literally 2 minutes, so maybe but I don't have time for another question, correct?
Go ahead. No, no, no. I'm sticking
Okay.
around. I'm not cutting you short. I know I
Okay.
said, I know I said nothing lasts forever, but we got time for another question. And I'm
Alright, I
flat.
wanna just make it
I love
count.
the way you do this. So I'm happy to chat with you.
I appreciate that.
I
Thank you
enjoy
very
my
much.
chat with you.
Let me just make it count then. I have so many questions left, but, let me ask you this. What did the work or what is the work that you're doing teach you about human strength?
Well, you ask questions I don't know if anybody's ever asked me on a podcast, and you got me thinking. Yeah, I mean, look, I think that when it comes to a family trying to save a loved one, it's an exercise in perseverance, right? And sometimes we speak to a family who's been going through this for so long, they're just done. And there's three when it comes to making the commitment to save somebody, right? When a family decides they're going to hire us, it requires a commitment of time, it requires a commitment of energy, and it requires a commitment of money, financial resources. Well, by the time they come to us, right, they've been dealing with this for a long, long time, years and years and years. They're also exhausted, and they've also potentially spent a lot of money on treatment that didn't work, or a lawyer that for whatever reason couldn't get things moving in the right direction. So we're asking them to make a commitment of time, energy, and money, and they're out of most of those things, if not all of them. Right. So when a client says, okay, I'm going to give this one last shot, it's to a certain extent, they're taking a bit of a leap of faith. Right. And I tell clients, listen, here's what I'm selling hope.
Mm.
I know that you're tired, you're exhausted, you've just been dealing with this for years and you've spent a lot of money. So I'm asking you to take a leap of faith and believe that I can get the job done. But here's what I can realistically do. This is going to take time. It's going to take some more of your energy and it's going to cost you some more money. Not necessarily for us, but treatment, right? Great treatment is not free. And even if you have insurance, you're going to have to pay some of it. Are you ready to make that commitment and take one more shot at this? Because I know a year from now, things are going to be completely different if you work the program and follow our advice and the advice of the clinical people. And some families say, yep, we're going to take one more shot at this. And other families say, you know what? Thanks, but no thanks. We're just done. And that's it. I'm not here to tell people what to do. This is a no judgment zone. You have to, my father used to tell me, when it comes to making important family decisions, you take advice from your lawyers and your doctors and your accountants and the other professionals in your life, and then you decide what's right for your family. And for some families, they're just done. Okay, then I can't help you. That's okay. That's life. Nothing lasts forever.
Thank you for sharing that. Well, it was a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for making time, Mark.